Elvis Presley was not a Presley. That sentence requires qualification, and the qualification is the entire point of this video. The most famous surname in the history of American music. 5 syllables that conjure rhinestones in Graceland, and a voice that rewired the nervous system of an entire generation. Did not belong to the man who carried it. Not biologically, not paternally, not in the way that surnames are supposed to work. The name was a gift, handed down not from a father to a son, but from a woman to her children. A woman who never married, who never named a single one of her lovers, and who raised 9 children alone on rented land in Itawamba County, Mississippi, by the sheer force of will and the slow economics of sharecropping. Her name was Rosella Presley. She is the reason the world says that name at all. In 2004, a genetic genealogy company in Salt Lake City extracted DNA from a set of stained bed sheets preserved from Elvis's final concert tour in 1977. The sheets had been purchased at celebrity auction by a Houston private investigator named Bobby Baccia, who had paid the price of a comfortable medium-sized home to acquire them. What the laboratory found in that 30-year-old biological material was precise and irreversible. The Y chromosome, the marker that passes from father to son, unchanged through every generation, matched no Presleys in any available database. It matched exactly several males bearing the surname Wallace from the same county in Mississippi, where Elvis's family had lived for generations. Keep that name, Wallace. It will return, and when it does, it will carry the weight of everything the official story left out. This is not a story about exposing anyone. Elvis's descendants, his granddaughters, his great-grandchildren, carry this inheritance, and it belongs to them. What follows is a story about what a name conceals, what DNA remembers, and what one woman in rural Mississippi decided her children would be called. Stay with this. The record is worth the time. The biography of Elvis Aaron Presley, as it has been told for 70 years, begins simply. Born on the 8th of January, 1935, in a 2-room shotgun house in Tupelo, Mississippi, to Vernon Elvis Presley and Gladys Love Smith. His identical twin brother, Jesse Guerin, was delivered stillborn 35 minutes before him. As an only child, Elvis became unusually close to his mother, a bond that every biographer since has treated as the emotional engine of his life. The family attended an Assembly of God church. The gospel music he heard there shaped everything that followed. On his father's side, the standard genealogy traces the Presley surname back to a Scottish or possibly German immigrant. Accounts vary, who arrived in colonial America in the 18th century. On his mother's side, the line runs through Scots-Irish and French-Norman stock, with one Cherokee great-great-grandmother noted in passing. The family was poor. Vernon drifted between jobs: milkman, carpenter, day laborer, and once served 8 months in jail for altering a check. The poverty was real. The music was an escape from it. That is the official story. It is not wrong in its facts. It is incomplete in its architecture. The first crack appeared not in a genetics laboratory, but in a county registrar's office. Elvis's grandfather, Jesse D. McDowell Presley, was born on the 9th of April, 1896, in Itawamba County, Mississippi, to an unmarried woman named Rosella Presley. The birth record lists no father. Rosella bore at least 9 children over a span of 28 years. She never married. She never publicly identified a single father. She gave every child her own surname. Mrs. Dacia Steele, one of Rosella's daughters, said it plainly decades later. "I can't remember anyone ever talking about who our father was. It was a big mystery when we were children. My mother just didn't talk about it." That silence, deliberate, sustained, unbroken across an entire lifetime, is the hinge on which the entire Presley name turns. Rosella did not lose the story. She withheld it. And the difference between those two acts is the difference between tragedy and sovereignty. Donald Yates was not looking for Elvis. Yates, the principal investigator at DNA Consultants, a genetic genealogy firm, was researching Cherokee Ancestry, specifically the anomalous mitochondrial haplogroups that kept appearing in Cherokee populations and that did not fit neatly into the standard 4-haplogroup model of Native American genetics. His work was archaeological in nature, tracing deep maternal lineages across the southeastern United States and comparing them with populations in Europe, the Middle East, and East Asia. Elvis Presley was at most a footnote in a larger investigation, but the Elvis sample changed the shape of the project. The laboratory extraction was performed in 2005 by Sorensen Genomics in Salt Lake City. The biological material, blood and other stains preserved on hotel bed linens from Elvis's farewell tour in June of 1977, had been in the custody of Bobby Baccia, a Houston-based private investigator and Cherokee descendant who had acquired the sheets at auction years earlier. Previous attempts to extract viable DNA had failed. The technology had not been ready. By 2005, it was 3 separate analyses were run. First, the Y chromosome, the paternal line. The result was haplogroup I2, subgroup IF2044. This is a lineage found at its highest frequencies in Scotland and Scandinavia. It matched no Presleys in any database. It matched with statistical precision several males bearing the surname Wallace from Itawamba County, Mississippi, the exact county where Elvis's great-grandmother Rosella had lived and raised her children. This is a legitimate challenge to any claim built on it. The sample was extracted from hotel linens, not from Elvis's body. The chain of custody runs through an auction house and a private investigator, not a forensic laboratory. It cannot be dismissed. The provenance question is real, and no responsible account can ignore it. The research team acknowledged it directly, but the Y chromosome result was not standing alone. It was about to be confirmed by an entirely separate line of evidence, one that had nothing to do with bedsheets and everything to do with what Rosella's family already knew. The second track is genealogical, and it arrives from a different direction entirely. In 2009, 5 years after the DNA results were first obtained, members of Elvis's extended family confirmed what the Y chromosome had already indicated. Jesse D. McDowell Presley, Elvis's grandfather, was a biological son of a man named John Henry Wallace. Wallace was a farmer and fiddle player born in Tilden, Mississippi in 1853. He was married to another woman, Almira J. McFadden, and the two had at least 9 children together, documented in U.S. Census records from 1900 and 1910. But Wallace had conducted a long-running affair with Rosella Presley, who lived nearby in Itawamba County, and from that affair came the child who would become Elvis's grandfather. According to Mona Robinson Mills, writing in Images of America, Itawamba County, Jesse himself had confirmed the truth of his parentage to family members before his death in 1973. He knew, the family knew, the name remained Presley. The convergence is exact. The DNA said Wallace. The family confirmed Wallace. Neither team, the geneticists in Salt Lake City and the genealogists in Mississippi, had coordinated their findings. Both arrived at the same man, the same county, the same generation. But the genetic evidence did not stop at the paternal line. The mitochondrial DNA, the maternal inheritance, passed from mother to daughter across millennia, told a different story entirely. Elvis's mitochondrial haplogroup was B, a classification that is one of 5 recognized Native American founding lineages. Specifically, the sample carried what Yates described as a Cherokee-specific form of haplogroup B. This maternal line traces back through Gladys Love Smith, through her grandmother Doll Mansell, through Martha Tackett, and ultimately to a woman known as White Dove, described in family records as a full-blooded Cherokee who married a settler named William Mansell in western Tennessee around 1818. The autosomal profile, the broader genetic fingerprint, confirmed both signals, showing high matches for American Indian populations, Scotland, and Spain. The man the world called the King of Rock and Roll carried a Cherokee maternal line, a Wallace paternal line, and a surname that belonged to neither. This is where the 2 tracks meet, and where a third layer, one almost no one discusses, enters the story. The DNA said Elvis was not a Presley by patrilineal descent. The family archives confirmed it, but the maternal line carried its own concealed inheritance, and Elvis knew about it, not from a laboratory, from his mother. Elvis's maternal great-great-grandmother was a woman named Nancy Burdine, believed to have been Jewish, her family having immigrated to America from what is now Lithuania around the time of the American Revolution. Because Judaism is traditionally transmitted to the maternal line, and because the descent from Nancy Burdine to Gladys Smith to Elvis Presley was an unbroken chain of mothers and daughters, Elvis was, by the strict definition of halakhic law, technically Jewish. He was aware of this. He acknowledged it in the most permanent way available to him. When his mother Gladys died on the 14th of August, 1958, Elvis had a headstone designed for her grave. In the upper left corner, he placed a Star of David. The headstone stood at Forest Hill Cemetery in Memphis until 1977, when both Elvis and his mother were moved to the Meditation Garden at Graceland. The original marker went into storage, a 20,000 square foot warehouse in Memphis, where it sat in a crate for nearly 4 decades. In 2018, Angie Marchese, Graceland's vice president of archives and exhibits, had the headstone taken out of storage and put on public display for the first time in 40 years. There was a lot of mystery surrounding it. Marchese said, "The star is on it, so it answered a lot of questions that were out there. Remember the name Wallace from the opening. Here is again, not as a scandal, but as a fact that reorganizes the entire family tree. Elvis's paternal biological line was Wallace. His maternal biological line was Cherokee and Jewish. His cultural surname was Presley, and the woman who made that surname permanent, who gave it to 9 children without ever explaining why or naming the men she chose not to, was Rosella, a sharecropper who could not read or write, who worked other people's land for 28 years, and who is the sole reason the most famous name in American music exists at all. The system that produced this naming was not unique to Rosella Presley. It was structural. In the rural American South of the late 19th and early 20th centuries, an unmarried woman who bore children faced a legal and social architecture that offered her almost no protection. There was no child support system. There was no enforcement mechanism for paternal acknowledgement. A married man who fathered children outside his household had no legal obligation to claim them and powerful social incentives not to. The burden fell entirely on the mother. The options were marriage, institutional care, or silence. Rosella chose silence. And in choosing silence, she chose her own name. This was not unusual. It was a pattern so common that genealogists have a term for it, a non-paternity event, a clinical phrase that conceals an ocean of human complexity. Across the American South, millions of family trees contain breaks in the paternal surname line, places where a child received his mother's name because the father was absent, married to someone else, or simply unnamed. The 19th century census records of Mississippi, Alabama, and Tennessee are dense with single mothers listed as heads of household, their children carrying maternal surnames, their fathers listed as unknown. Elvis Presley's case is not unique in its structure. It is unique only in the prominence of the name attached to it. What Rosella did, naming her children after herself, refusing to identify the fathers, supported her family through manual labor on rented land, was a survival strategy practiced by thousands of women in the postbellum South. The system did not record these women's choices as acts of autonomy. It recorded them as irregularities, as illegitimacy, as absence. But Rosella was not absent. She was the one who stayed. The living present matters here. The Presley family tree, as documented by Chancery Clerk Julian Riley in his book Root of Elvis, includes nearly 100 relatives, some black, some white, connected through the intertwined Wallace and Presley lines of Itawamba County. The DNA evidence compiled by Riley from family members across multiple branches confirmed the Wallace paternity. These are not abstract historical figures. They are people alive today who carry the same genetic inheritance that Elvis carried, the same Wallace Y chromosome, the same Cherokee mitochondrial signature, and who have watched the world call it by a different name for 70 years. What the evidence cannot answer is the question that remains when the science is finished. Did Rosella Presley withhold the name of her children's father out of shame or out of defiance? Was her silence a wound or a weapon? The record does not say. The census forms list her children. They list her occupation. They list her as unmarried. They do not list her reasons. And it is in that gap between the fact and the motive that the story of the Presley name lives. None of this diminishes what Elvis built. The voice belonged to him. The stage presence belonged to him. The capacity to hear gospel in a Pentecostal church and rhythm and blues on Beale Street and country on the radio, and combine all of it into something the world had never heard. That was not inherited from a surname. That was not carried on a Y chromosome. That was his. What he made of American music cannot be reduced to the question of whose blood he carried. and no responsible account would attempt it. But there is something in the ancestry that the music itself seems to have known. Elvis Presley, a man whose biological line runs through a German wine grower who left the Palatinate in 1710, through a Scottish Wallace line in rural Mississippi, through a Cherokee woman called White Dove, through a Jewish immigrant from Lithuania, through a sharecropping mother who refused to disappear, made music that crossed every boundary that his country had built to keep people apart. He did not transcend those boundaries by ignoring them. He transcended them because he was made of them. Every line in his blood had already crossed a border before he ever sang a note. The bedsheets from the farewell tour are still in private custody. The headstone with the Star of David is on display at Graceland. The name Presley, 5 syllables, instantly recognizable in every country on earth, traces back not to a patriarch but to a matriarch, a woman who worked fields she did not own, who bore children she named after herself, who never explained her choices to anyone, and who died in 1924 in Pineville, Mississippi, 11 years before her great-grandson was born in a shotgun house 40 miles away. The name was hers. She gave it. The world kept it. The silence she chose is 70 years older than the fame. It has not been broken. It has only been inherited.